Welcome to one of the most disturbing cases recorded in history. Before we begin, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact time at which you're listening to this narration. We're interested in knowing which places and at what times of day or night these documented accounts reach. In the early 1900s, in Newton County, Arkansas, the Holloway Hotel stood proudly on the edge of Blackwater Creek, a magnificent three-story Victorian building adorned with intricate woodwork, tall windows, and a wide wraparound porch offering guests serene views of the creek and distant mountains. Built in 1882 by Thomas Holloway, a former railroad engineer, the hotel had earned a reputation as a respectable establishment for travelers passing through the increasingly prosperous mining region, fueled by zinc discoveries in nearby hills and expanding timber operations throughout the Ozarks. However, beneath this grand facade lay a horrifying secret that no guest, not even Thomas Holloway's own wife, fully comprehended: a consuming entity living deep within the hotel's foundations. It was known that the Holloway family had acquired this land from the Harrington estate after its value significantly dropped following three unexplained deaths between 1876 and 1879. The medical examiner's report for William Harrington, the first to die, noted the unusual contortion of the deceased's features, suggesting his final moments were marked by extreme terror. The second death, that of Harrington's eldest son James, was ruled an accident after he apparently fell into an old well on the property. The third, groundskeeper Elijah Peterson, was classified as misadventure, his body found submerged in Blackwater Creek. Thomas Holloway purchased this cursed parcel for approximately one-third of its previous assessed value, yet the deed of sale contained an unusual addendum. The previous owner's widow, Elizabeth Harrington, stipulated that certain underground features of the property remain undisturbed as per family tradition. This stipulation was struck through and initialed by Holloway, suggesting he had negotiated its removal. Elizabeth Harrington left town immediately after the sale, refusing all correspondence regarding the property until her death. Hotel construction proceeded rapidly. What locals didn't know was that Holloway, instead of building on entirely new foundations, preserved the old structure's stone base and what he described as a serviceable well chamber. Samuel Davies, one of the original construction crew, recalled shortly before his death that Holloway was particular about the basement work, hiring 4 outside men to handle specialized underground work, mostly at night. They told us the basement needed extra reinforcement due to the creek's proximity and flood risk, Davies said. But those men were unloading metal pipes, not the usual kind for water or gas, but something heavier with unusual fittings. Thomas Holloway's bank records and personal ledgers revealed that by late 1898, he was in severe financial distress due to speculative mining investments. Debts mounted, and creditors were closing in. A February 1899 note in Holloway's secret ledger read, "All conventional avenues exhausted. Must consider M's suggestion regarding Baltimore connections, though the humiliation would be considerable." Holloway, however, chose a different path, turning his attention to a discovery in the hotel's basement. A journal entry from March 1899 marked a turning point. The Harrington woman's warning suddenly makes sense. I have spent the past week exploring the original foundation chambers, areas I had previously avoided due to her strange insistence that they remain undisturbed. Behind the old stone wall in the northeast corner of the cellar, I discovered a passage leading to a chamber unlike anything I have encountered. The dimensions of the space defy the measurements of the foundation above. It seems larger inside than should be possible, given the building's footprint, but it is what lies at the center that has changed everything. I dare not describe it fully, even in these private pages, Suffice to say, it is not a well in any conventional sense, though it contains a substance that flows like liquid. M, his wife Margaret, refuses to look at it, saying the smell alone confirms her family's legends. About the Harrington property. She claims her grandmother once mentioned a place in the Ozarks where something hungry lives in the earth. I dismiss this as superstition until now. By June 1899, Holloway's tone had shifted. His journal entry noted, "The discovery beneath the kitchen has altered everything. I cannot commit to paper the full extent of what I have found, but suffice to say that the previous owner's reluctance to access the lower chambers was based on cowardice rather than structural concerns. What flows there may be our salvation. The liquid exhibits properties unlike anything described in scientific literature. Its consistency and behavior defy explanation by conventional chemistry. Most importantly, its hunger appears insatiable. The initial tests with small animals confirm that it consumes organic matter completely, leaving no trace within hours. The possibilities for practical application are significant, though M grows increasingly distressed by my experiments. She refuses to enter the basement now, claiming she hears sounds from below, even when I have conducted no tests. The journal then documented extensive work in the hotel basement, all conducted at night after staff had departed. Holloway mentioned hiring 2 men from outside the county to assist with modifications to the original shaft and installation of the collection system. Both men were paid in cash and sent away upon completion. An entry from August 28, 1899, states, "The eastern wing modifications are complete. The mechanisms function smoothly in tests. The remote activation from my office works without noise, though the system requires significant weight to trigger fully. This will not be a concern given the intended application. M discovered me testing the controls yesterday and became hysterical, threatening to expose everything. I reminded her that such action would result in our complete financial ruin. She has retreated to her room with her laudanum. I have doubled her usual dose to ensure her cooperation, at least in the short term." A September 5, 1899, entry provides technical details. The secondary shaft now connects to the primary chamber through a system of channels carved into the bedrock. The limestone proved easier to work than anticipated, almost as if the stone wanted to yield. Most remarkable is the behavior of the substance when the channels were opened. It flowed upward against gravity, coating the new surfaces as if curious about the expansion of its domain. The workers did not observe this, as I had sent them away before the final connections were made. Some things are not meant for casual observation. The flow has now stabilized, creating a reservoir in each of the 3 shafts, connected but distinct. Each reservoir exhibits slightly different properties, though all share the fundamental characteristic of consumption. The most disturbing entry, dated September 10, 1899, read, "The system is complete. The 3 access points have been disguised as water wells, though only the northwest shaft actually provides water. The eastern shaft now connects directly to rooms 27, 29, and 31, just as the kitchen shaft connects to the private dining room. When the floor mechanisms are activated, everything above simply disappears below. M is horrified by what I've done, but cannot deny the financial necessity. The first test using livestock was successful. The well accepts everything. The sounds afterward were unexpected, but ceased within hours. The substance appears to digest not just flesh and bone, but all organic material, wood, leather, fabric. Only metal remains, and even that shows signs of corrosion after prolonged contact. I have devised a mechanism for retrieving valuable items before they suffer damage. Our financial salvation is assured, provided we select candidates carefully." The journal then documented a series of contributions to the well beginning in April 1900. Each entry included a room number, the calculated weight of the occupant, and a notation of how long the processing required. Names were never used, only initials. The first entry, dated April 12, 1900, read, MC, Room 31, approximately 130 LOB. Processing complete within 6 hours. No residual effects. The well satisfaction evident in quietude following. Financial benefit. Recovered personal effects valued at approximately $37, plus paid room rate. No inquiries expected as subject has no local connections. Mechanism performed flawlessly. Activation from office proceeded without audible alert to adjacent rooms. M took additional laudanum and claims no knowledge of events. Subsequent entries followed a similar pattern, with increasingly clinical descriptions of what appeared to be a systematic process of murder for financial gain. A June 30, 1900 entry noted, JW, Room 27, approximately 180 LEOB. Processing required 9 hours, longer than anticipated. Some mechanical noise from beneath floor afterward, necessitating explanation to guests of building settling. Financial benefit. Horse and sample case sold in Harrison for $41, plus recovered currency of $17. Subjects' employers may inquire eventually, but connection to this establishment will be difficult to establish definitively. M increasingly agitated despite increased laudanum. Claims to hear scratching sounds from basement, even when I detect nothing. An August entry described the disposal of the Barrow couple. EB and LB, Room 29, combined weight approximately 310 lb, largest contribution to date. Processing required 14 hours and produced unusual effects. The substance level in all 3 shafts rose noticeably, and luminescence was observed for approximately 20 minutes following complete dissolution. Most troubling was the auditory phenomenon, distinct vocalizations emanating from the primary chamber for nearly an hour after processing completed. M heard these clearly, despite being 2 floors above and under the influence of laudanum. She became hysterical, requiring physical restraint and additional sedation. I may need to consult Dr. Wilson regarding a more permanent solution to her increasing instability. The most disturbing entries were from December 1900 during the ice storm. A single entry dated December 11th contained only, "Today was most productive, rooms 27, 29, 31, 14, 16, and 22 all activated. Total approximate weight, 1040 lbs. The well feasts. Processing ongoing through night. Sound levels higher than previous, but storm covers adequately. M took laudanum and retired early. Financial benefits substantial. The children were unexpected additions, but necessary given circumstances. The Thornton family particularly lucrative. Jewelry, pocket watch, and travel funds, totaling nearly $200. This should resolve all outstanding debts with sufficient remainder to facilitate relocation if necessary. A later entry, dated December 18, 1900, marked a shift in tone. Something has changed. The well's behavior following the December 11th contributions has been unprecedented. The substance level has risen in all shafts, nearly reaching the basement floor in some areas. Luminescence now constant rather than temporary. Most concerning are the sounds, no longer simple scratching or isolated vocalizations, but what appears to be coordinated phonation. M claims she can distinguish words, though I maintain this is impossible. She insists the voices are calling her name specifically. I have increased her laudanum dosage again, though Dr. Wilson expresses concern about potential dependency. More troubling was the physical change in the substance itself. The consistency had altered, becoming more viscous, almost tactile in appearance. In the primary chamber, formations had emerged that bore unsettling resemblance to anatomical structures, tissue configurations suggesting partial reconstruction of consumed material. This was not observed in earlier stages and indicated a fundamental shift in properties. The final legible entry, dated March 18, 1901, read, M can no longer bear it. The sounds from below have changed. She swears she heard words last night, not just scratching. I reminded her that nothing survives the well's embrace. Nothing returns from those depths. But even I must admit that the quality of the noises has altered. Perhaps we have been too greedy. Perhaps the well has limits we have exceeded. We will conclude operations and depart as soon as arrangements can be made. Denver offers opportunity without the burden of what lies beneath us here. M insists we burn the eastern wing before departing, says it must be cleansed with fire to prevent what she calls continuation of the cycle. I have indulged this request as the insurance policy now provides sufficient coverage to establish us comfortably elsewhere. The arrangements are in place. 3 days hence we shall be free of this place and its hungry darkness. The Ozark Historical Society immediately contacted state authorities upon discovering the journal. A preliminary investigation began on April 30th, 1964, led by State Police Detective Warren Mitchell. His initial report notes, "The journal appears authentic based on paper composition and ink analysis. If genuine, it suggests Thomas Holloway may have been responsible for numerous homicides at the hotel site between 1899 and 1901. However, the journal's references to the well and its embrace remain unclear. The technical descriptions suggest some form of mechanical apparatus was installed to deliver victims to a lower level of the structure, but the purpose or mechanism of the processing mentioned remains speculative," Mitchell continues. Preliminary excavation around the foundation reveals evidence consistent with Holloway's descriptions of modifications. Structural analysis confirms unusual floor construction in the rooms mentioned, 27, 29, and 31, with evidence of hinge sections and mechanical trigger mechanisms accessible from a hidden passage adjacent to what would have been the hotel owner's office. These mechanisms appear designed to collapse the floor of selected rooms, creating a chute-like effect that would channel any contents toward the eastern shaft. Similar mechanisms, though less sophisticated, have been identified connecting the private dining room to the kitchen shaft. The technical achievement is considerable, especially given the period's limitations, suggesting Holloway possessed engineering knowledge beyond what his background would indicate. On May 7, 1964, excavation began at the tertiary shaft beneath the former kitchen. Workers removed the concrete seal and discovered a metal-lined shaft approximately 30 feet deep, terminating in a chamber roughly 15 feet in diameter. The chamber contained no human remains, but the walls showed evidence of unusual staining and erosion patterns. Mitchell's report describes a residue unlike typical mineral deposits found in well structures. The substance appears organic in nature, with a texture resembling partially dissolved animal tissue. The lower portions of the chamber walls exhibit significant corrosion of the metal lining, with complete penetration in several areas, exposing the surrounding bedrock. Most disturbing was the discovery of what Mitchell described as formations within the chamber that defy conventional explanation. His report, accompanied by photographs now sealed in state archives, notes the chamber floor contains raised structures composed of a material resembling calcified tissue. These structures display organizational patterns, suggesting intentional arrangement rather than random accumulation. Several formations bear unmistakable resemblance to human anatomical features, finger-like projections, curved surfaces, analogous to cranial structures, and in one case, what appears to be a partial facial configuration, with indentations corresponding to eye sockets and a nasal cavity. Geological specialists consulted regarding these formations have no explanation for their origin through natural processes. Forensic analysis completed on May 21, 1964, identified trace elements of human hemoglobin in samples taken from the chamber walls. The report also noted the presence of an unidentified organic compound that had partially degraded the metal lining. The compound exhibited properties similar to powerful digestive enzymes, but at concentrations not typically found in nature. Dr. Eleanor Simmons, The biochemist who conducted the analysis wrote, "The substance bears superficial resemblance to digestive fluids found in certain carnivorous plants, but at a scale and potency that exceeds known biological systems by several orders of magnitude." The compound remains active despite decades of exposure to air and moisture, suggesting extraordinary stability. In laboratory tests, it demonstrated capability to break down organic material, including bone and hair, completely within hours. Her report continues with a disturbing observation. Most anomalous is the behavior of the substance when combined with organic material in laboratory conditions. Rather than simply dissolving the test material, porcine tissue samples, the substance appears to temporarily incorporate structural elements before breaking them down. Microscopic examination reveals a phase where the substance organizes the digested material into recognizable cellular structures before complete dissolution. This organizing property has no parallel in known biochemical processes and suggests capabilities beyond simple digestive function. As excavation continued into June, workers discovered a series of pipes connecting the 3 shafts. The pipes appeared designed to transport liquid from the tertiary chamber to the other 2 shafts. Most disturbing was the mechanism discovered. Beneath rooms 27, 29, and 31, a series of trapdoors operated by levers accessible only from a hidden passage behind the hotel owner's office. The floors of these rooms had been constructed with hinged sections that, when activated, would tilt at a 45-degree angle, causing anything on the floor, including beds and occupants, to slide into the waiting shaft below. Mitchell's investigation also uncovered a hidden room adjacent to the kitchen, accessible only through a concealed door in the pantry. This room contained shelving still holding various items, jewelry, watches, wallets, and other personal effects that matched descriptions of possessions belonging to individuals who had disappeared from the hotel. A leather-bound ledger found in this room contained meticulous records of items recovered and their subsequent sale or disposition, with entries corresponding to the dates of known disappearances. Detective Mitchell's final report, submitted August 12, 1964, concluded, "Evidence suggests Thomas Holloway modified the hotel structure to enable the murder of selected guests, primarily those unlikely to be immediately missed, traveling salesmen, unmarried women, and couples passing through without local connections. The victims were apparently dropped through trapdoors into a shaft leading to a chamber beneath the building. What happened in that chamber remains speculative, though chemical analysis suggests the presence of a highly corrosive substance that may have been used to dispose of remains. Conservative estimates based on hotel records indicate as many as 27 individuals may have been victims of this system between April 1900 and December 1900. The report recommended efforts to locate Thomas and Margaret Holloway, but preliminary research had already determined both had died in Denver. Thomas in 1917 of liver failure and Margaret in 1910 of what was recorded as nervous exhaustion. Hospital records from St. Mary's Sanitarium in Denver indicate Margaret Holloway was admitted in June 1908 following what was described as a nervous collapse accompanied by auditory hallucinations and extreme agitation. Notes from her attendings. Physician, preserved in the sanitarium's archives, mention her persistent claims of hearing voices through the floorboards and conviction that something was following the family from their previous residence. A particularly revealing document from this period is a transcript of an interview conducted with Margaret by Dr. James Harrington, no relation to the property's previous owners, on September 3, 1908. In it, Margaret describes her experiences. "They're not gone, you see. That's what Thomas doesn't understand. The well doesn't truly consume them. It transforms them. They become part of it. But they don't disappear. I hear them at night calling through the walls. At first, it was just sounds, scratching and tapping, then words, my name, over and over. Now, They speak in sentences. They know things they shouldn't know, private conversations, thoughts I've never shared. Their learning growing stronger. The more it consumes, the more aware it becomes. Thomas fed it so many during the storm. The children were worst of all. Their voices are clearest now. They follow us. Denver isn't far enough. Nothing would be. The interview continues with Margaret describing what she called visitations. Sometimes I see them, not just hear them. They rise from drains, seep through cracks in the floorboards. They have no proper shape, just suggestions of what they once were. A hand here, a face there, merging and separating like figures in smoke. But they're becoming more substantial. Last night one touched me, a cold, wet contact on my arm that left no mark, but felt as real as your hand would. It had a child's fingers, small and seeking. They're learning to reach through, to extend beyond the pipes and chambers that once contained them. Distance doesn't matter to them now. They've found us, and they're so hungry. The investigation stalled through the remainder of 1964, hampered by the age of the case and lack of identifiable remains. In December, funding for the project was redirected to more current cases, and the site was once again sealed and abandoned. The Historical Society, concerned about liability and unsettled by the findings, sold the property to the county for a nominal fee in March 1965. In 1968, the property was purchased by developer Conrad Westfield, who planned to demolish the remaining structure and build a modern motel catering to the growing tourism industry in the Ozarks. During demolition in February 1968, workers breached the sealed primary well shaft. According to the foreman's incident report filed with county authorities but never publicly released, one worker was lowered into the shaft to assess structural integrity before complete removal. The worker, identified as Joseph Keene, 34, descended approximately 40 feet before radio contact was interrupted. When pulled back to the surface 7 minutes later, Keene was in a state of extreme distress, unable to articulate what he had seen. He was transported to Regional Medical Center, where he was treated for shock and apparent hallucinations. Medical records indicate he repeatedly told staff that it's still alive down there and the well isn't empty. When pressed for details, he described movement in the darkness and something that spoke without a mouth. His medical chart contains a notation that he was observed attempting to plug his ears with cotton from his pillow, explaining to a nurse that, "It knows my name now. It's calling me." A more detailed account comes from Dr. Michael Reynolds, the attending physician whose private notes were later provided to investigators. Patient exhibits symptoms consistent with extreme psychological trauma. Physical examination reveals no injuries beyond minor abrasions, consistent with rapid ascent through confined space. Most concerning is the patient's insistence that something in the well shaft communicated with him directly, not through audible speech, but through what he describes as thoughts that weren't mine pushing into my head. He claims to have received specific information about his personal history that he had shared with no one at the worksite, including details about a childhood incident in Ohio. Patient also reports visual phenomena in the shaft, shapes made of darkness moving against the darkness, and faces forming and dissolving in something like thick water. When questioned about whether these might have been hallucinations caused by oxygen deprivation, patient became agitated, insisting, "It touched me. It knows me now. It won't forget." Keene checked himself out of the hospital against medical advice on February 17, 1968. He left Newton County the same day and, according to a brief follow-up investigation, relocated to Oregon. He declined all requests for further statements about his experience in the well shaft. A single letter from Keene to the county sheriff, dated March 3, 1968, contains only the brief statement, "Whatever is down there should remain buried. Fill it with concrete, fill it with stone, then pray it's enough." Westfield abandoned the development project shortly thereafter, citing unexpected environmental concerns. The property was sold to the county for a nominal sum and designated as unsuitable for development. County records indicate that in March 1968, approximately 30 cubic yards of concrete were poured into the well shafts. A notation in the work order specifies that the concrete was mixed with additional materials requested by county engineer, later identified as rock salt, quicklime, and unusually blessed water provided by the pastor of the local Baptist church. Today, nearly a century after the events at the Holloway Hotel, the site remains undeveloped. Local ordinances prohibit excavation deeper than 6 feet in the area. A small marker erected by the Historical Society in 1969 simply identifies the location as the former site of a hotel, with no mention of its dark history. Blackwater Creek continues to flow nearby, and during heavy rains, the foundation stones of the old hotel are sometimes visible when erosion removes the covering soil. What remains unclear, and perhaps will always remain so, is the true nature of what Thomas Holloway referred to as the well. His journal suggests he discovered something beneath the hotel, something that could dispose of bodies so completely that no evidence remained. The forensic analysis from 1964 confirmed the presence of unusual chemical compounds, but could not identify their origin. The mechanisms he installed to deliver victims to this entity or substance operated with calculated efficiency, allowing him to commit murders for financial gain without detection. Some researchers have suggested that Holloway may have discovered a natural geological feature, perhaps a sinkhole containing a rare combination of microorganisms and minerals that accelerated decomposition. Professor James Thornton, a geologist who briefly examined the site in 1966, proposed that certain limestone formations in the Ozarks contain unusual bacterial communities capable of breaking down organic material at accelerated rates. These communities typically develop in isolated subterranean environments with unique chemical compositions. What Holloway described as the well may have been such a formation, though his descriptions suggest properties beyond those documented in current scientific literature. Others propose more mundane explanations, that Holloway simply used powerful acids or other chemicals to dispose of his victims, and the journal's more cryptic references were attempts to obscure his methodology or manifestations of guilt-induced delusions. Dr. Catherine Mills, a forensic psychologist who reviewed the case in 1972, suggested that Holloway's journal exhibits classic patterns of psychological distancing and mystification often observed in serial killers who develop elaborate justifications for their actions. The references to the well as a sentient entity may represent externalization of his own murderous impulses, allowing him to perceive himself as merely serving the well's hunger rather than acting on his own volition. What these theories fail to explain are the sounds reported by multiple witnesses, the scratching noises from below, and eventually, if Mary Ellis and Margaret Holloway are to be believed, something that resembled words. They also failed to account for Joseph Keene's extreme reaction to whatever he encountered in the well shaft in 1968, decades after the last victim would have been consigned to its depths. Perhaps most disturbing is a detail found in the final pages of Mitchell's investigation, filed separately and restricted to senior personnel. A recording device lowered into the tertiary shaft in July 1964 captured approximately 8 minutes of audio before failing. Analysis revealed only ambient sounds for the first 7 minutes: water dripping, settling earth, the distant rumble of groundwater. In the final minute, however, technicians isolated a sound described as rhythmic scraping, interspersed with vocalization-like elements that suggest articulated speech, though no words could be definitively identified. The recording was scheduled for more sophisticated analysis at a federal facility in September 1964, but transportation records indicate The tape never arrived. All copies were reportedly destroyed in a small fire at the evidence storage facility in October 1964. Detective Mitchell requested reopening the investigation in 1965, but was denied. He took early retirement the following year and moved to Arizona, where he died in 1972. His personal papers, donated to the state archives by his daughter, contain a single reference to the Holloway case. Some investigations are best left incomplete. Some answers would only replace mystery with madness. A journal entry from Mitchell's personal diary dated August 17, 1964, but not included in official records, reads, "The techs finally cleaned up that recording from the shaft, removed the background noise, amplified the vocal elements. I wish they hadn't. What we're hearing isn't random sound, it's voices. Multiple voices speaking in unison, with occasional individual voices emerging briefly before submerging back into the collective. The words are English, though distorted, as if spoken through liquid. The phrases repeat, feed us, join us, find us." Most disturbing is the final segment where a child's voice clearly separates from the others, calling what sounds like, "Mommy, I'm still here. We're all still here." I've ordered all copies destroyed. Some things shouldn't be preserved, even as evidence. The Holloway Hotel has faded from local memory. The site is now an unremarkable wooded lot surrounded by chain-link fencing. Few residents know the story, and fewer still give it credence. But occasionally, usually after heavy rains, when the water table rises, hikers near the old foundation report unusual sounds, a liquid churning, a metallic scraping, and sometimes just at the edge of hearing, what might be words. A park ranger, interviewed in 1966, described his experience. "I was checking the boundary markers after the spring floods and found myself near the old hotel site. It was getting dark, but I know the area well enough. Then I heard it, like someone dragging metal across stone, but with a rhythm to it. Then something else, like whispering, but not quite. Not in English, but not like any foreign language I've heard either. Something about it made the hair on my neck stand up. I've been in these woods all my life and never felt fear like that. I left immediately and haven't been back at sunset since." The ranger's account continues with details not included in official reports. "The strangest part wasn't the sound itself, but how it affected me physically. As I listened, I felt a pulling sensation, like something was tugging gently at my insides, drawing me toward the old foundation. My thoughts became foggy, replaced with images I'd never seen. A hotel room with a bed against the wall, a dining room with people I didn't recognize, a man with a mustache operating some kind of mechanism beneath a desk. These weren't like normal thoughts or memories. They pushed into my mind from outside, vivid and forceful. I found myself walking toward the foundation, without consciously deciding to. I'd gone nearly 30 yards before I realized what was happening, and forced myself to turn away. As I did, the images faded, replaced by a single thought that didn't feel like my own. We are so hungry. The most recent documented incident occurred in August 1967, when 2 geology students from the University of Arkansas were conducting soil surveys in the area. Their field recordings, preserved in the university archives but rarely accessed, contained 2 minutes of what the students labeled unidentified subterranean acoustics. In the background of these recordings, barely audible beneath the students' technical discussion, something rises from the earth. A sound that might be water or wind or shifting stone, but resolved through digital enhancement, carries an unmistakable cadence of speech. Phonetic analysis conducted by linguistics professor Dr. Robert Chambers identified patterns consistent with language, though matching no known human tongue. His report, never published, but included in the university's restricted collection, notes. The vocalizations exhibit syntactic structure and phonemic consistency suggestive of linguistic communication, but employ sound combinations physiologically impossible for the human vocal apparatus. One of the students, Martin Coleman, later provided additional context in a letter to the Historical Society. What the recording doesn't capture is the visual phenomenon we observed. As we conducted our survey near the old foundation, we noticed an unusual discoloration in the soil, a darkening that seemed to spread outward from the foundation stones like liquid seeping through cloth. The discoloration moved against the gradient of the slope, which is physically impossible for normal fluid dynamics. As it approached our equipment, we observed a localized temperature drop of approximately 15 degrees Celsius. Most disturbing was the behavior of insects in the affected soil. They appeared to organize in patterns resembling alphabetic characters, forming and reforming in sequences that almost but not quite constituted recognizable words. When we attempted to photograph this phenomenon, all three cameras malfunctioned simultaneously. The discoloration receded as abruptly as it had appeared when another hiker approached from the trail, calling a greeting. We chose not to include these observations in our formal report, as they defied scientific explanation and would likely have undermined the credibility of our geological findings. What speaks beneath the ruins of the Holloway Hotel? What waits in the darkness of a well that feeds on human lives? Perhaps it is merely the wind through hidden caverns or water rushing through the remains of Holloway's pipes. Perhaps it is nothing more than the imagination giving voice to the echoes of past horrors. Or perhaps, as Thomas Holloway discovered, to his eventual horror, what he found beneath his hotel was never merely a disposal system. Perhaps what he called the well had accepted his offerings for its own purposes. Perhaps it still waits, patient and hungry, beneath the sealed concrete and fallen timbers of a hotel long reduced to foundation stones and fading memories. The investigation files remain in the Newton County Archives, accessible by special permission, but rarely requested. The land remains undeveloped, protected by ordinances whose original purpose few remember, and deep below, something may still be digesting its last meal. A meal of 27 souls delivered by a desperate hotel owner who discovered too late that some hungers, once fed, only grow stronger. In the decades since, several attempts to develop the land have failed for various reasons: financial complications, permit denials, unexpected equipment failures. Local residents speak of bad luck associated with the property without knowing its history. Only a few elderly citizens remember the stories their grandparents told of the Holloway Hotel and the guests who checked in but never checked out. The report concludes with a recommendation against future construction, citing unstable subterranean conditions of indeterminate origin. The geologist who authored the report later refused to elaborate when contacted by local historians, saying only that some places in this world are best left alone. An addendum to the report not included in public records but discovered during the Historical Society's research contains this passage. Soil samples from the foundation area exhibit anomalous properties inconsistent with the surrounding geology. The last official document relating to the site is a geological survey from 1969, which noted unusual subsidence patterns in the soil surrounding the old foundation. Most notable is the presence of an unidentified organic compound that appears to modify the structural integrity of surrounding materials. In laboratory tests, this compound demonstrated the ability to permeate seemingly impermeable substances, including concrete and certain metals. Most concerning is its apparent response to proximity with living tissue. When a sample was placed near a laboratory mouse, the compound oriented toward the animal and displayed increased molecular activity. The implications of these properties for long-term containment are troubling. Conventional barriers may prove inadequate if the substance maintains these characteristics over time. Today, Blackwater Creek still flows past the overgrown lot where the Holloway Hotel once stood. Trees have reclaimed much of the area, their roots slowly displacing the foundation stones, but nothing grows directly above where the well shafts were sealed. 3 barren circles in otherwise lush vegetation, as if the earth itself rejects what lies beneath. And sometimes, if you stand at the edge of the property on a quiet night, when the wind is still and the creek runs low, you might hear it. Sound from deep below, not quite scratching anymore, not quite whispering. Something in between, something waiting, something that remembers the taste of those who once fed it, and hungers still. The most recent report from a hiker who strayed from the main trail in June 1968 describes finding a perfect circle of dead vegetation about 15 feet in diameter, centered on what looked like an old foundation stone. In the middle was a small pool of something that resembled water, but moved wrong, too thick, too deliberate in its motions. As I watched, it seemed to form patterns almost like handwriting. I took a step closer to see better, and that's when I heard the voices, not out loud, but in my head. They knew my name. They knew things about me no stranger could know. They promised to show me something wonderful. If I would just come a little closer, just reach out and touch the surface of that pool. I was actually extending my hand when my dog began barking frantically, breaking whatever hold those thoughts had on me. As I turned to leave, I felt something like fingers brush against the back of my neck, cold, wet, but somehow solid. I ran all the way back to the main road. My dog refused to come home with me, ran off into the woods, and never returned. Sometimes I think she knew something I didn't, something about what might have followed me home if she hadn't distracted it. The land remains undeveloped to this day, a quiet testament to horrors largely forgotten. The well continues its patient vigil beneath the earth, occasionally reaching out to remind the living of its presence. And Thomas Holloway's desperate scheme to save his financial future lives on as a warning that some bargains extract costs far beyond their apparent price, and some hungers, once awakened, can never truly be satisfied. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for the continuation of such content, and to support us, please subscribe.